Welcome back for another video. In this video we will be covering lesson 5 exercise. So we'll be covering the fifth exercise here. I call this the rook. It looks like a rook from a chessboard kinda, minus the castellations on the top of it. In this exercise we're going to run into a couple of problems here. It's very challenging to do this pocket here. There's a couple of ways you could go about it. One of the ways you could plunge an end mill, and I'm always interested to see how you guys approached it when I go and I grade the assignments. But we could plunge an end mill in there and then finish it. But really, we can actually do this with a boring bar. It just requires very precise settings. So I'm going to go through it that way, and I'm going to show you how to do this with a boring bar just by spot drilling some of this material out of here, and then we're going to bore and we're just going to kind of chisel away at this and get it out of there. The other thing that we have is we have another problem with our radii here. This presents another issue for us, so we have to make sure that we create this correctly so that we get the correct geometry. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin this exercise. Okay, so of course, as always, I'm going to start off by selecting my machine and going to the correct plane, and we are now ready to do some drawing. So I'm going to start on the inside of that little pocket there, or that counter bore, I guess we'll call it. Looks like I am at 0, negative 0.375, and then we're going to 1.0, negative 0.375, and then we're going to 1.0, 0, and then 1.25, 0, and then 1.25, negative, it looks like 0.75 there. Okay, and it's at this point that we are going to have to create a little bit of geometry. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a vertical line there, and I'm just going to end it. And then I'm going to start from the back now, and I'm going to create that moving forward. Alright, so I'm going to start at 1.45, negative 3.5. And I am going to go to, I'm actually going to skip the groove in here for the moment. So I'm just going to go straight to 1.45, it looks like negative 2.5. Okay, and then I'm just going to do a vertical line there as well. And I'm going to hit check. Now you notice I mentioned I skipped this groove. Basically the reason for that is I'm just going to rectangle this thing out. And my first corner, I'm just going to make that at 1.45, negative, looks like 3.1. Enter. And now I can just control this by controlling the height and width. And I know that it's an 1/8 inch deep, so that's going to change my height to negative 0.25, because remember I am operating in diametric, and my width is going to be a positive 0.2. Alright, and just to kind of see how that looks pretty good. So I am going to hit check and check, and then I'm just going to trim that. Alright, so there we go. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to create these circles. So I'm going to create circles here because remember, I cannot fillet this. If I fillet this, I'm going to have an issue. If I knew the angle of this line, it would be no problem. I would just create a line and a line at that angle, and then I would fillet it and trim it. But I can't do that because I don't know that angle. So that angle is only determined by where it meets these tangencies. So I have to draw the circles to get that. The one thing I do know is that the circles are tangent to these edges, so that is a good start. What that tells me is that the edge of the circle is, and by the way, all of these radii are 125, is 0.75 plus 125 negative in the z for this first circle right up here. What it also tells me is that I know that from this edge to the bottom of the circle is exactly 1/4 inch. And since that circle is an 1/8 inch, I know that basically that circle fills this area right here. So that tells me that basically the center of this circle is an 1/8 inch below this point. Now remember, if it's an 1/8 inch below, it's an 1/8 inch below on both sides, meaning that is 1/4 inch. So it lies, the center of that circle lies at 1 inch diameter. So we're going to go ahead and draw that. Okay, so the center of that circle we said lies at 1 inch diameter. So I'm going to put 1.0, comma, and then of course it is going to be 0.75 plus my radius, 125, which is negative 0.875. And I'm going to hit enter. Now, when I do this, it should give me an 1/8 inch radius, and it does. The other way I could do this is just click, manual, and I'm just going to put in my 0.125 radius and .125 tab. It doesn't want me to do it because I had it on tangent. Well, we'll make it tangent. So we'll select it to here. And we have our 0.125 radius. Okay, so that gives us our first circle. The next circle, if we look at this one, it looks like it's, so we have an inch. So basically it is 1 inch and 1/8 from the back side. So 1 inch and 1/8 subtracted from 3.5. That would give us 2.375. So it's negative 2.375 in the x. And of course we have this diameter, so we need to find out what it is in the y, or in the z is negative 2.375. The x is going to be this diameter, and then we know that it lies 1/8 inch in from this diameter. Well, what we need to do is double that, because remember it's an 1/8 inch on both sides. So then we're going to subtract 1/4 inch from here, and that means it's 1.2 diameter. So I'm going to create the center of this. I'm going to turn this on manual this time, and we're going to make it 0.125, and I'm going to create the center point. And we're going to say that that is 1.2 comma negative 2.375. And you can see that that actually lies perfectly up against that edge, so we're in good shape. Now to finish this off, I am just going to create a line, and I'm just going to do 2 endpoints, select this, making sure that I'm on the tangent, and selecting that one and tangenting it as well. Okay, so we're going to trim this. And there we go. There is the outside of our part correctly drawn. Now we need to add a couple chamfers, so I'm going to add those. It looks like our drawing says that they are all 1/8 of an inch, so we'll make sure they're 1/8 inch. And while we're in here, our radii, of course, they're all 1/8 of an inch as well. So we'll make that 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so our chamfer 0.125, there to there. That's okay. So basically what it's telling us is that chamfer met exactly with the quadrant point on that circle. So it got rid of that whole line that we created. And I have a feeling that this one will too. And it did. Okay, so now that we see this, this is correctly drawn, and all I need to do is add my 125 radius to there. Okay. So we have the part as we need it. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set up our stock. And put my stock plane as the correct plane. Oops, DZ. And my properties. Looks like I have a part that is 3.5 long. All this other stuff is already correct. 1.5 inch part. I think that should be just fine since we're using 1.45 material. So I'm going to hit check my properties, and I'll just turn on my jaws so they're on, and hit check. Okay, everything looks good there. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is face my part. So I'm just going to hit face, select my tool, and hit check. Check. I know that's correct. Rough. I'm going to rough this. Check. And, of course, check. I know that all that is correct as well. Now, a couple of things we need to do here. Before I go ahead and start grooving this out and finishing it, and this one as well, I'm actually going to cut this because I want this as rigid as possible. I want as much material here as possible while I'm working way out here on the end. So I'm going to do this first. Okay, so in fact, actually, I'm even going to insert that ahead of this rough because I didn't need to rough that beforehand. So I'm going to insert whatever I'm doing in front of that rough. Okay, so let's start by, we're just going to center drill this, actually, or spot drill this, I mean. We're going to use a 3/4 inch spot drill, and I'm going to hit check, and we're going to go to this depth, and I'm just going to take 5/1000 off, just that way it doesn't go the whole depth and I can just finish it. I'm going to leave a little bit for finishing, and I'm going to take my tip comp off. And that is exactly what I want, and you can see right there is the gap for my 5/1000. Okay, now next I need to somehow find a way to bore that out. So let's give that a shot, and we're going to try and fail a couple times here just so you see what problems we're running into. So let's rough, and let's select there to there, check. Okay, we need a boring bar, and I recommend a smaller boring bar. We're only going 3/4 deep, and we only have a 1 inch diameter. I'm going to use an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch boring bar. It's a 1/4 inch diameter boring bar, and I'm going to hit. So a similar tool has been added. Well, I'm not sure why that was added, but anyway, we're going to use this tool here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and we are going to make this 0.02. We're going to take small passes. Let's see, plunge. Well, we definitely need to turn our plunge on, right? So we'll turn both of those on. Even really, oh no, we only really need the one. Let's just put a front angle clearance, just so we have some front angle clearance in there. And I'm going to hit check, and my lead in, okay, it's coming straight in, that's good, and out. Okay, I don't want to extend that contour because it's going to go way down. I'm okay with where it's at. Alright, let's take a look at what happens there. Oh, we want to use remaining stock too. Oh, we have a collision. Okay, so the problem here is it's going to start in the middle and try and work its way up to the outside. That is a problem. So the only way we're going to get this to work is if really we start up here and kind of face it out of there. So to do that, we need to do a couple of things. The first thing we need to do is we need to change the direction that we're going. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change this to facing it. Okay, now that made something else change that I'm going to go back and show you in a second. But I'm also going to change my boring bar here. So I'm going to take a look at this. And I want to make my boring bar, first of all, I want to make it a 35-degree diamond. I want to give myself as much clearance as I can. And I'm going to make this a 1/8 inscribed circle. So basically, I'm just making my insert smaller. And for the boring bar, I'm going to select this type. So that looks pretty good. Okay, so there is my tool now. So I've changed that and just made it a little bit smaller. Okay, now my lead in. If I'm going to be facing this, I need to lead straight in and then straight out. So I just want to make sure that I have those correct. Okay, so this is going 45 degrees. So it's coming down and out. I'm going to come straight out for this. And I'm going to hit check. My plunge parameters are already on, and remaining stock's on. So let's give that a shot and see what that does. Okay, it's giving me a problem. All right, the reason why that's giving me a problem, and you may have noticed it when I changed this, the compensation went off to the right. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to cut inside of here. That's a problem. Obviously, we can't do that. We want to be off to the left of this line. So I'm going to hit check, and we're going to regenerate that again. Okay, so now we have kind of what we want to do here, right? This is more or less doing exactly what we want. Okay, so now we need to adjust a few things. So we got the basic idea of what we want to do. Now let's make a few adjustments. So, oops, why did I go into face? Rough, okay. So now let's go into our lead in and lead out. All right, for our lead in, let's lead in coming up this way into the material. And let's also extend that contour a little bit so that we're starting off the material a little bit. So let's extend that 0.05. The lead out, we're not going to extend that yet. Let's try and see how that works for us first. Okay, voila, we got it to run without a problem. Okay, so that is how you get that to work. Now, notice that we're not going completely past. That's okay because this is just a roughing pass. We're going to actually go a little bit past with our finish. So now that we got that to rough out of there, now we're going to run a finish. And I'm going to hit check. Select my tool. And I am going to go to lead in. And I'm of course going to extend my lead in 50 thousandths. And I'm going to change that lead in direction as I did with the rough. But here's where the difference is. I'm actually going to extend this 0.02 just a little bit, and I'm going to come straight out and hit check. And I'm also going to make sure my plunge parameters are on. And I'm going to hit check, and there we go. You can see it's going a little bit past center, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want it to do. Now, we definitely, we could finish this either direction, but I think it's better if we finish it this way. All right, now let's regenerate them all. Okay, let's move this down. And now we can tackle this groove up here, or this, whatever we want to call this, this little indentation. So the best way to do this, we can try to use our pointed tool again. So let's give that a go, shall we? Let's see if we pick here and here. We're going to hit check, and we're going to come down and grab, I'm just going to grab this one that we don't use, this left-hander, since we're not using it. We're going to use our 35-degree diamond, but we're going to pick our straight tool again and pick check. Okay. All right, and let's see here. Depth of cut, we can take 50 with this. And entry amount, all of this stuff looks good. We're turning normal, and we're off to the right. We have wear on. Now, what we want to do is come in here to the plunge parameters. Of course, we want to turn this on. I'm going to turn them both on because there's really no reason not to. We could just leave this one on too. Either one of these would work. So I'm going to hit check. And I'm going to check our lead-ins. So now our lead-ins, we don't want to lead in going that direction. I think this would be better if we started this way, came in, and then went down around. Even vertical would be okay. But I like this, so I'm going to extend this too a little bit. I'm going to extend it 50 thousandths. I'm also going to extend the lead out 50 thousandths. And our lead out is going to be exactly like that. So that looks good. So let's try this out. And of course we want remaining stock on. All right, that looks really good. There's only one problem. Take a look at that. Doesn't look like that has enough clearance. So that's just a problem with our tool. And I'll show you this in the simulation. Oops, not that. Top. So basically our tool has a bit of an angle on it. Well, it just can't get into that tangent there. That's a problem. So we need to find a different tool to do this. And as many of you hopefully are thinking in your head right now, the answer to that is the button tool that we talked about before. So we're going to go back in there and we're going to select a different tool. And here we have a button tool. All right, now the problem is we have an 1/8 inch radius, and that is a 3/8 button tool, which means the radius on that button tool is 3/16 or 0.187. So it's too big. So we need to change that tool to a smaller radius. So we're going to go in there and we're just going to make that inscribed circle 1/4 inch. That's going to give us a diameter. Actually, we're going to go a little smaller than that. We're going to go 3/16. And we're going to rough it out with that. And now I'm also going to check the holder and see what D is. Obviously, this can't be wider than that button. D is 3/16. So let's just make that 0.125. And that should give us what we need. Okay, and let's go ahead and try this one. All right, that looks significantly better. You can see we have the radius there, and everything looks really nice. Okay, so that works well. Now what we'll do is we'll do a finish pass on this. And let me see here. We'll go to finish. And I'll select this one and this one. I could have just hit last. Of course, that same tool was correct. Number of passes is 1. Let's take a look at our lead in, lead out. We're going to extend it 0.05, 0.05, and we just need to change that lead in to go this direction. And hit check, and we need to turn our plunge parameters on, which they are, and hit check. Okay, and there is our finished pass. Now, one thing I wanted to do is I'm going to enter the finished pass before I did all that stuff. So I'm going to come up here after that initial rough, and I'm going to add my finished pass for the outside here. Check. And that is going to be our profile tool. Yes. And let's just make sure all of our stuff is set correctly. It is. Plunge parameters, they want to be off for this because we don't want it plunging into there. And hit check. Okay. So that is now finished. And all it is left to do is this little groove. And of course we know how to do that. We could just do a 2-pointer on this. Check, enter, and we'll pick our, where's our 1/8 inch grooving tool? There it is. Oops, I accidentally double clicked it. Use stock for outer boundary. Everything here is good. Of course, everything we know here is good. I'm going to put a little overlap on there, 0.01. And there is our groove. Last but not least, I'm going to do a cutoff. And hit check. And of course, that same tool. Everything here I know is set up and good. And there we go. And let's see how that looks. The line can be visible all the way around. Backside has a nice little chamfer on it there. So everything there looks good. Okay, so I think basically everything there is exactly the way that we want it. I'm happy with that part. Again, if you have any questions, of course, you can email me. Feel free to come and contact me in class as well.